Hi and welcome to this faction guide. This time it's about the Council Keleres. And in this video we'll have a look at their faction abilities. I will give an example of how you can play the first game round, and I will also recommend some technologies you can research. Is there something you would like to add?
Yes, I want to know if you're covering all three variants in this video.
Yes, I will cover all three variants. But before we dive into that, let's have a look at their starting technologies and their starting units. As the only faction in the game, you don't have fixed starting technologies. Instead, you get to choose two from the other starting technologies among the other players in your current game.
But with 24 factions in this game, all starting with different technologies, then this must be a hard choice, right?
No, not really, because you want to go for Sarween tools. It's a yellow technology, it will give you a production discount, and it will also open up the path so you can research your other faction specific technologies. And it works perfectly in tandem with your agency supply network technology, but I'll get back to that a little later in the video. There are 5 factions in this game that starts with Sarween tools, so the chances are fairly good that you can start with that, but if not, then just go and see if you can find any other yellow technology, because you really want to start with one of those.
But tell me why.
Your first faction technology is called I.I.H.Q Modernization. It requires one yellow technology before you can research it, and you want to get this as soon as possible, because it will give you your very own planet that you cannot lose in any way. It has 2 resources and 3 influence on it, and it's not just a planet, it's actually a legendary one.
And what makes this planet legendary?
There are actually 3 good reasons to control this legendary planet. First of all, there are 2 public objectives and a secret one a legendary planet can help you score. Second, this planet is not really a planet, it's actually a stronghold on Megator Rex. So if you control Megator Rex, then you will get a space cannon that hits on a 5 and has production 3, which will help you tremendously in keeping the planet. And thirdly, if somebody else controls Megator Rex and they play the Imperial strategy card, so they score that Imperial point, then you as the Keleres player will gain 2 command tokens.
That sounds interesting.
Yes, taking Megator Rex with this technology gives you an edge in keeping it, because you get instant protection with the PDS and also the production capacity.
How does that work?
Well, that's easy. First you move into the system, then you resolve any space and or ground combat there. And when you establish control of the planet, meaning you have units on the planet, then you get the PDS instantly. But also the last step in the tactical order is production, so you can actually produce units there right after you have gained control of it.
Nice!
Yes, and one more thing. When you have the I.I.H.Q Modernization technology, then you get to be neighbors with all players who have units either in the Megator Rex system or in any of the adjacent ones. Because remember, this is not a planet, it's a stronghold on Megator Rex.
And how's that good?
You must be a neighbor with someone before you can trade with them. So if you don't have any units anywhere near the Megator Rex system or any of the adjacent ones, then you can still trade with those players who have.
But what about the other starting technology?
Yes, I'll get back to that, but first let me cover the other faction technology.
We are really going off a tangent here.
Yes, but sometimes you just gotta go with the flow. The next technology is the one I mentioned before. It's called the Agency Supply Network. And this technology makes Sarween tools twice as good.
And how's that?
Well, it's fairly easy. First, you need a second space dock out, and that could be the one on Megator Rex. Then the technology says that whenever you use the production abilities of one of your units, typically your space dock in your home system, then you're also allowed to produce units at the other space dock. So, for instance, if you activate your home system, then you can apply the Sarween tools discount of 1 resource on the units you produce there, but you can also apply the same discount on the other space dock or on Megator Rex. So in this way, you can get 2 times 2 infantry out for free with Sarween tools and this technology. and that is pretty good.
And what about the secondary of warfare? It specifically says that you can use the production abilities of one of your space docks in your home system.
That is actually a really good question, because yes, normally you can only produce on one space dock in your home system, but if you happen to play either the I.I.H.Q Kingdom or the Argent Flight variants, then you have more than one planet in your home system. So you can actually place a second one there, and then if you have this technology, then you are allowed to produce on both of those space docks in your home system whenever the warfare card is being played.
And what about Sarween tools?
Yes, it applies here too, and that's why I think the Sarween tools technology is so good for the Keleres. And one last thing about this technology, and that is, of course, you can produce on both space docks in the same system, but the same goes if you activate your home system to produce units there, then you can also activate the production on any forward space dock and also produce units here. And the awesome thing about this is that this system is not locked down, so those units are ready to move out in the very same game round. And that is pretty awesome.
But we were going to talk about starting technologies, right?
Yes, I almost forgot that. Starting technologies. Well, if you're lucky, then the Ghost of Creus is in the game. They start with Gravity Drive, so if they are there, make sure to grab that. Because with Gravity Drive you can add +1 to the movement value of one of your ships during a tactical action, and this is such a good technology. But if ghosts are not in the game, then I would go for any other blue technology. Or alternatively, I would go for AI development algorithm, because it will open up for a lot of unit upgrades.
And what can the commander do for us?
First and foremost, we need to spend one trade good after we have performed a component action. And that is, for instance, playing that action card. Then with our commander, we are allowed to perform an additional action after we have performed a component action.
I think you need to elaborate a little bit more on this.
A component action is an action you can take where a game component has the word action printed on it. So that can be faction abilities, it can be technologies, it can be relics, and it can of course be action cards. It just needs the word action printed on it, then it's a component action.
And then what?
Then we are allowed to make any action that we would like to. It can be a tactical action, simply activating a system, moving ships like we always do. It can be a strategic action, playing our strategy card. It can be any action that we would like to.
So what if we make 2 component actions in a row?
Then we are allowed to make an additional action, because they stack, so we can make as many component actions as we like to.
Alright, I think that's enough about starting technologies and the commander. So let's go back to the 3 variants we talked about in the beginning of the video.
The variants, yes. That is actually a faction ability called Tribune. Yeah. So even before the game begins, you have to choose a flavor. You can choose between playing as the Argent Flight, the Mentak Coalition, or the I.I.H.Q Kingdom. And each of these flavors will give you a unique hero. So for instance, if you choose Argent Flight, then you won't use the original hero, but instead you will get a Keleres variant of it. And the same goes of course for the 2 other flavors.
Can you choose freely between them?
The only restriction is that you cannot choose a flavor if the original faction is also in the game. And it's not because the game would become unbalanced if you could, it's simply because you have to share the same home system tile, command tokens and control tokens. But now let's go have a look at them in the tabletop simulator.
Let's do that.
So first off we have the I.I.H.Q Kingdom variant here. In their home system they got 2 planets with a total of 3 resources and 4 influence on it. And this is a fairly good home system because you can use 1 planet here to buy 1 command token, and you can maybe use the resource here to produce a single unit or help you research a technology. So the good thing about the I.I.H.Q variant here is the fairly flexible home system. But you can still only produce up to 4 units every time you produce units on a space dock that you of course place on Archon Ren here. Then we had the Argent variant. It got 3 planets in it with a total of 3 resources and 3 influence on it. And this is the worst home system of them all because it got 3 planets, and that is just a lot harder to protect in case somebody attacks your home system. and you are also limited to only producing up to 4 units each time on a space dock in it. Then lastly, we got the Mentech variant with just a single planet. It got 4 resources and a single influence in it, and of course you will use the resources every single time. And I think this is the strongest home planet of the 3, because you can use the 4 resources here to buy a technology in round 1, or you can produce up to 6 units in this system.
What other differences are there?
The hero is also unique for each variant, so let's have a look at those. Operation Archon, it says, after an agenda is revealed, you may cast up to 6 additional votes on this agenda, predict aloud an outcome of this agenda. For each player that votes for another outcome, gain 1 trade good and 1 command token, then purge this card. So this is an after. Normally you cannot vote on an agenda if you play an after rider, but in this case here, you are still allowed to vote and even cast 6 additional votes on it. But you can be fairly sure that the other players will do whatever they can, so you won't benefit from this hero. So if you want to play Keleres with the X-Char variant, then you should do it for the home system and not the hero. Then we have the hero, the Overwing Setter. It says, at the start of a round of space combat in a system that contains a planet you control, place your flagship and up to a total of 2 cruisers and or destroyers from your reinforcements in the active system, then purge this card. The Keleres faction already got some pretty strong abilities, so what I think is meant here is to actually prevent other players from taking your home system away from you. So let's say another player flies in, try to take one of your planets. So whenever you are 3 ships below your fleet supply, then you can pop the hero, then 2 cruisers or destroyers and your flagship are participating in the ongoing space combat, and that can help protect your home system. Then we have the hero, the Irvan's Covenant. It's an action by itself. It says, reveal cards from the action card deck until you reveal 3 action cards that have component actions. Draw those cards and shuffle the rest back into the action card deck. Then purge this card. So with this hero here, you don't necessarily know what you get from those action cards, and that is maybe not the most important part of it, because you will get action cards with an action on it. So that means that you can postpone executing on your plan. So let's say you want to gain control of another planet or maybe just another system, and then you can wait doing so by postponing the real action here until the other player or players have passed, and then you can do so without them being able to do anything about it. So maybe this is the strongest hero, but I really like the Argent heroes more.
What about the Keleres starting units? Do they differ depending on what variant you choose?
No, you always have the same starting units. So you start with 2 carriers, 1 cruiser, 2 fighters, 1 space dock, but only 2 infantry. So it's crucial in round 1 to get more of those if you want to get a good start.
It sounds like a first round demonstration is coming up.
It is, but before we go to that, I want to talk about the faction ability called Patronage and the Agent. The Council Patronage lets you replenish your 2 commodities and earn you 1 trade good in the beginning of each strategy phase. So having access to these 3 extra resources in every game round will help boost your economy throughout the entire game.
But you can't spend commodities, they must be traded, right?
Yes, normally you're right, but with the Keleres Agent, then you are allowed to spend your commodities as if they were trade goods. So effectively, you have 3 trade goods available in each game round. But of course it can be worth even more if you can trade with another player, so that you can convert your 2 commodities to, for instance, 3 trade goods on its own. But sometimes you either can't or you won't trade with other players, and then you can just do it yourself.
So between our home system, our 2 commodities and the trade good, we have up to 7 resources we can spend in round 1. That's huge!
Yes, it certainly is. And now let's have a look at how we can spend all those resources in round 1. And in this example here, we have the Federation of Sol as one of the neighbors with the Warfare card, and we have the Ghost of Creus as our other neighbor with the Leadership card. And what is interesting here is that Federation of Sol has picked Warfare, so he can gain control of 3 systems, but he is also one of the factions that can stall playing his strategy card. So that means that not every player in the first round may be able to do the secondary, which is to produce units in your home system without activating it, so they can actually move out in the very same game round. But he can do that because he has this faction ability called Orbital Drop. It's an action, spend 1 token from your strategy pool to place 2 infantry from your reinforcements on 1 planet you control. And both Keleres and the Ghost of Krios here is very dependent on producing more infantry in round 1. Or for the Ghost of Krios, it is actually a carrier they lack. They have the infantry to gain control of 2 planets and 2 systems, but they simply lack some fleet capacity to do so. Us as Keleres, we have picked technology, and that means that we have our turn after the Warfare player. This is also a good card for the Keleres player, because we want our first faction technology in round 1, so that we gain control of this extra planet here. And what is interesting here is that we get our turn after the Warfare player, and in this way we can see how we can actually save 1 command token compared to the Ghost of Krios. But let's get started. So let's say that Ghost of Krios starts by activating Hope's End, flies out there with some units. It's not really important here, and they can flip Hope's End immediately and get a mech. The Federation of Sol activates out on Primal, flies out there with a carrier, some infantry, like so, and they explore that planet, and he waits, exhausting the card because he wants some extra infantry on his second turn. So now it gets to be us. So of course we also fly out here to Lysis and Velnor, carrier, cruiser, and our 2 single infantry here. Let's bring the fighters as well. Let's have a look at Lysis. Get a relic fragment, and Velnor. Let's see what that is. Oh, so that is now a +1/+1, which is great. And now we're back to Ghost of Krios. He's waiting for the Warfare card, and so are we. So he plays the leadership card now, and now it gets to be Federation of Sol. So he activates Arenam and Mir, flies out there with his carrier, 2 infantry, and the fighters, explores the planets, and he also exhausts Primor here, so he can place 2 infantry, and he'll just place them on Mir because that is the better planet of these 2. But he could also place them on Primor if he wanted to. Now it gets to be us, so we play the technology card and we research this I.I.H.Q Modernization technology. So we get Custodia Viglia, exhausted, and the attach planet card. We are now back to Ghosts, and they don't have any more actions they can do while they're waiting for the Warfare card, so they just activate the Supernova here. Gets to be Sol now, and he also researched the technology on when we played the technology card. It doesn't really matter which one. So as his action, he now orbital drops 2 infantry, and he could put them on Arenam, or we can put them on Primor here. Now it gets to be us, and we are also waiting for the Warfare card, so we have to stall, so we can also activate the Supernova. And now we're back to Ghosts, and they're still waiting for the Warfare card, so they pick leadership so they would have sufficient tokens. They have to stall once again, and now Federation of Sol doesn't have any more actions they can do except for playing the Warfare card. So they lift the token from Primor, for instance, put it back, and then the rest of us gets to produce units, so we'll do that. Spend 1 token here, and then we want to produce, for instance, 2 cruisers, 3 infantry, and a mech. We can produce 6 units, 4 units plus 4, so that is 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. This one will cost a full $1. We have 4 here. We exhaust our agent, so we can spend these as trade goods, and then we have Sarween tools that gives us a production discount. So we only need to spend 7, and we have produced the 6 units that we have here. So in this example here, Ghost of Keleres needed to stall twice. We only needed to stall once, which is really important because we only have one token left. And now we can actually tease Federation of Sol a little bit because we have Gravity Drive as one of our starting technologies, which we got from Ghost of Keleres. So we can activate out on Evera here. So our carrier can move 2, and then we can bring 4 units there. And the important unit here is the mech, because in this example Sol was not lucky enough to gain any trade codes or have any planets with infantry on it, so they could activate and engage in space combat over Evera here, but they will not be able to commit any ground forces to Evera because we have a mech, and to do so they need to spend 1 influence. So now we have forced Federation of Sol to move forward to Atlas, and they will have a little hard time gaining control of this planet even though their infantry is pretty strong. But normally we wouldn't be able to get to Gravity Drive in round 1, and then of course we would have taken control of Perimeter instead. And this is it for the first round demonstration. So we gained control of 2 planets. We got our first faction technology with our really good planet here, and with this I think we have gotten a pretty good start.
We still need to talk about which other technologies to research, right?
You're absolutely right. But first let's have a look at the Flagship and the Mechs, because they are pretty awesome as well. Both the Flagship and the Mechs are some really strong defensive units. If an opponent wants to activate the system that contains your Flagship, then they have to pay 2 influence to do so. Or if they want to land some ground forces on a planet you control with a mech on it, then they have to pay 1 influence to do so.
And what if they can't?
Then your system is completely safe, because there is no other way to attack you. Just remember that trade codes can also be used as influence.
What else can you say about the Flagship and the Mechs?
They are pretty good at defending your home system, because it will cost them 2 influence to activate it if you have your Flagship in there. And if you play the Argent variant, then you can pop your hero after your first Flagship has been destroyed, and then you can get a brand new out along with 2 cruisers to help you defend your home system even better. But besides that, then the stats on both the Flagship and the Mechs are pretty normal.
It sounds like you prefer the Argent variant.
Yes, I think the Argent version is the most fun of the 3.
With that home system, have you completely lost it?
Even though Argent has a crappy home system with 3 planets in it, and you can only produce 4 units at a time. But at least with the hero, you know exactly what you get. With the Mentak hero, yes, you can get 3 really good action cards, but you can also get 3 meh action cards. And lastly, the X-Char hero. If the other players doesn't really care about the outcome of an agenda, then you can be pretty sure that they will do whatever they can, so you get as little from the hero as possible. So make sure to play it at the right time.
Speaking of agendas, I think there is one more faction ability, right?
Yes, it's called the Law's Order. It's very simple. You spend 1 influence, and then in the beginning of a tactical action, you can ignore all laws that are in play until the end of your turn.
Can you give some examples?
Yes, of course. It could be the enforced travel ban that closes all alpha and beta wormholes, so players cannot fly through them. Then you can spend 1 influence, fly through the wormhole that you prefer, and then at the end of your turn, then the law is back in play.
That sounds interesting.
Yes, it can be, but in reality there are not that many laws that you can actually benefit from. So it is actually one of the faction abilities I often forget to use.
Well, that's a shame, but I think this faction is good in so many other ways.
Council Keleres has one more trick up their sleeve, which is their faction promissory note, and that is the one that you can either give or trade with another player. It's a rider, and it says, after an agenda is revealed, you cannot vote on this agenda, predict aloud an outcome of this agenda. If your prediction is correct, draw 1 action card and gain 2 trade codes. Then return this card to the Keleres player. So maybe this is not the best faction promissory note in the game, but at least you can try and sell it very often. Could earn you a single trade code every single time, and that will boost your economy a little bit. And now let's talk about what other technologies to research. And As mentioned earlier, we want to start with a yellow and a blue one if possible, and the most likely ones are Sarween tools and anti-mass deflectors, because a lot of the other factions are starting with either of these two. But alternatively to Sarween tools, that gives us a production discount, we can also go for the scanning drone network, which will also be very beneficial for us because we want a second space dock out, and then whenever we activate that system to produce units, we can also explore one of the planets in that system. Alternatively, on the blue side, we could also go for Dark Energy tab, so we can explore those frontier tokens and get a little more flexibility whenever we need to retreat from a space combat. Or if Ghost of Krios is in the game, we could actually start with Gravity Drive, which would be awesome. But the first technology to research after our starting technologies is the I.I.H.Q Modernization technology, so that we get to be neighbors with all players who have units either in or adjacent to Megator Rex, and we will gain control of the Custodia Vigil planet here with the attached planet card as well. Then the next technology to get is either our agency supply network, and that is the next one to get if you already got your second space dock out, because then you can benefit from producing on both of those space docks whenever you activate one of them or do the secondary of warfare. And if you don't have it out already, then you could also go for AI development algorithm, because when you research a unit upgrade technology, you may exhaust this card to ignore any one prerequisite. And since we start hopefully with a blue and a yellow technology, this counts as a red one, then we will have access to a lot of unit upgrades. Then we will get access to, for instance, Dreadnought 2. So we start with a blue and a yellow technology, so AI development algorithm can count as the second blue one, and then we have access to a strong unit that has movement 2 and capacity 1. But sometimes we don't have the resources to produce a lot of Dreadnoughts, and then Cruiser 2 could be an alternative. So we have a yellow, and AI development algorithm is a red one by itself, and then we can get the green one from the ability here, and then we get access to the Cruiser 2, which both has a good combat strength, the best movement value in the game, and it also has capacity 1. But we also have access to Fighter 2 and Carrier 2. What are your best tips and tricks for playing the Keleres? Let us all know in the comments below. And if you like the content on this channel, you can become a Patreon member or a member of this YouTube channel. It will mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.